Okay, Exile Chapter 16. Mr. Forgle cared. He may have left them alone and unconscious on the streets of a forbidden city, but he truly believed Sophie would be able to get them home safe. And that's exactly what she'd done, even if things hadn't gone quite according to the plan. Does that answer your question? Dex asked, breaking the silence. Yeah, it actually does. Grady was wrong about the Black Swan. Whatever reasons they had for staying secret, it couldn't be because they were murderers. Murderers didn't care. She had a feeling Grady wouldn't need to believe her. Though sometimes he could see it for himself, too. Bad. She had no clue where to find it. Unless... What was that? What the clue in the compass was for? To have her clear the Black Swan's name? Was that why they were still hiding? Let the past be your guide. But whose past would guide her? Grady's? You're doing it again, Dex said, nudging her with his elbow. That thing where you stare into space, totally obvious to everything around you, usually means you're planning some secret thing that'll end in an emergency Elwyn call. I'm not planning anything. Planning would mean she'd at least have some idea what to do. Yeah, well, whatever. You're not planning. Just, if you need me, I'm here, okay? I know, Dex. But she'd put him through enough already. More than she'd realized. She picked up the broken piece of gadget he'd been playing with. So what's this thing? Right now, it's a pile of junk. But I'm hoping I can turn it into a gadget that will transmit my thoughts as telepathic signals. Sophie smiled. There are much cooler things you could do with your talent. Dex shrugged and snatched the piece away from her. He twisted the broken wires together, reconnecting them to other pieces of metal. You know, if you took technopathy training, you'd not gonna happen. Just a little more than a week, and I could start ability detecting again. And I'm going to work as hard as I can to make sure they trigger something. School starts in a little more than a week. She'd known it was coming up, but that suddenly felt very, very soon. Yep, the opening ceremonies are for next Friday, and school starts the following Monday. Didn't you get your Foxfire uniforms yesterday? Not that I know of. She told herself to stay calm, that everything had been settled at her final tribunal. But the council couldn't have changed their minds about letting her return to Foxfire, could they? I should go home and look for them, she said, getting up and pulling out her home crystal. Yeah, you'll want to make sure your costume fits. She was so distracted by her worries that she didn't catch what Dex said until the warm light was already pulling her way. Costume? Please tell me this is a joke, she begged as she trudged down the stairs into Havenfield's living room in a tight bodysuit covered in a shaggy brown fur. It had sewn-in feet. Feet! Apparently her Foxfire uniforms along the mortuary they called an opening ceremonies costume. They had arrived the day before, But Sandor, who had given her a 20-minute lecture on how dangerous it was for her to leave slurps and burps without telling him, had insisted on inspecting the package before delivering it to her. What was next? Was he going to start searching her laundry before the gnomes delivered it into her room? Worried the kidnappers might attack her with deadly socks? You forgot your headpiece, Adeline said, picking up a folded piece of brown fabric from the pile on the couch. She slipped the band of fur around Sophie's forehead, adjusting the narrow strip of cloth attached so that it hung down the center of Sophie's face and ended just below her waist. There, now you're a mastodon. There were many, many questions racing through Sophie's mind as she scratched her neck where the furry collar was tickling it. But the most important one was probably, why am I dressed like a shaggy elephant? Mastodons are the level 3 mascot. Right, but Adeline fanned out the elbow-length crescents of fabric that draped off the sides of the headband like droopy ears. It's part of the opening ceremonies. You're going to love them, Grady added as he came in front from the front pastures. Neon feathers stuck out of his hair, which made him look more like himself again. Everything okay? The nervous lines creasing his face told her he wasn't referring to the elephant costume of doom. Yeah, everything's good. She'd find a way to prove to him that he was wrong about the black swan. And in the meantime, she was happy to settle on a truce. If only she could find such an easy solution for her furry bodysuit problem. I seriously have to wear this. Don't worry, all the other level 3s will be too, Adeline promised. And you'll see how fun it all is when you're at the rehearsal on Monday. Somehow she doubted that. Wait, rehearsal? Am I rehearsing? Grady smiled. The choreography, excitement, and nervous tangled in Sophie's stomach as she and Dex arrived at Foxfire on Monday morning. The grounds buzzed with strange activity, but it was still the same familiar campus, and walking the paths with Dex safely at her side felt healing somehow, like she'd taken another piece of her life back. Even if she was currently being trailed by a 7-foot goblin and everyone was staring at her because of it, at least they weren't whispering about the girl who was taken. Plus, it was nice to have a morning off from bathing the vermilion, especially since she was also dealing with a restless alicorn and a jealous imp. Sylvanie hated to be alone, but she still wouldn't let anyone except Sophie near her. And Iggy had started hiding sludgers, the giant slimy worms he ate, in Sophie's shoes and pillows to punish her for spending so much time outside. Grady and Adeline thought it was hilarious, but Sophie kept worrying about Sylvanie's slow progress. If she didn't find a way to make the stubborn alicorn start trusting people, Bronte would have Sylvanie shipped off to the Heeks for sure. Dex knew a shortcut through the fields of purple grass, but they had to weave around the gnomes poking the ground with thin metal rods. More gnomes were balanced on the roof of the U-shaped main building, draping the crystal walls with garlands of green leaves. Each of the 6 colored towers now bore a banner with a jeweled mosaic of the mascot for that grade level. In onyx Germanian for the level 1s, a sapphire halicorn for the levels 2s, an amber mastodonian for the level 3s, an emerald dragon for the level 4s, a ruby saber-toothed tiger for the level 5s, and a diamond yeti for the level 6s. Sophie couldn't decide which costume would be more embarrassing. Then again, mastodons were the only ones with a trunk. What are they doing? Sophie asked, pointing to another group of gnomes, struggling to brush the outside of a 5-story glass pyramid in the center of the campus with tearing copper poles, decorating for the ceremonies. As they got closer, Sophie could see that the gnomes were actually painting a snot-like slime over the pyramid's walls. She gagged when she caught the musky smell. Hadn't the elves heard of streamers and balloons? The opening ceremonies would be in Foxfire's main auditorium, and rehearsal was held there as well. The huge stadium had a gleamy golden dome and thousands of empty seats inside. Mentors in bright orange capes and spreaded the prodigies by grade level, and Sophie felt like a little smug as she passed the level 2s to join the level 3s. Sir Harding, a broad-shouldered elf with a warm brown skin and shoulder-length black hair woven into a simple braid, introduced himself as their physical education mentor and called for everyone to gather around him so he could demonstrate their choreography. Sophie ordered Sandor to try to hide as she lined up with her classmates. When Sir Hardening finally had their attention, he tossed his cape to the side, held out his hands, and launched into the most complicated dance Sophie had ever seen. Stomping and spinning and jumping, he ran through the full routine ever seen 3 times, none of which made any sense to Sophie, and then told everyone to split into small practice teams so they could get a feel for how the choreography worked as a group. I still don't see what this has to do with school, Sophie grumbled as she followed Dex and Bianca to a patch of empty floor space. Jency rushed up beside Bianca, and for a second Sophie didn't recognize him. His usual messy brown hair had been slicked with too much gel, making his round face look even rounder. Not everything at Foxfire is about learning, Bianca informed them. The opening ceremonies are about celebrating promise. This is our chance to show the older generations what we could do. By dancing like elephants? Dex laughed. It's weird, but it's fun. Yeah, and we get showered with candy at the end. This really cool kind of falls from the ceiling like snow, and it lasts for months and months and months. If you take some home, Jency said in his usual, I had too much sugar for this morning way. That's not the point of the ceremonies, Bianca corrected, making Jency blush before she perfectly recreated the stomp, stomp, spin, twirl move Sir Hardening had shown them. The mascot dance represents the qualities we'll be developing this year. Mastodons are fast learners that rely on each other as a team. The choreography is designed to showcase that. Sophie mumbled as Bianca dipped the final curtsy with a natural feet reuse to corroborate. It didn't help that someone kept testing different colored spotlights in diamond parts of the room, making it hard to see. You're forgetting the middle part, Jency told her. He bent until his hands touched the floor and spun in a series of tight circles. See? Sophie tried to copy him, but the turns made her dizzy, and she glanced up to clear her head. One of the spotlights spotlight flashed in her eyes. A headache flared, blinding her from the pain. She started to topple, but a pair of arms caught her before she hit the ground. "Whoa, you okay?" Dex asked from what sounded like a far away. Her ears were ringing, and the world was a blur of two bright colors. But as Sophie sucked in slow, steady breaths, the loom faded back into focus. And she realized Dex was holding her, expecting her to answer his question. "Yeah," she said, hating how shaky her voice sounded. "Sorry, guess I spun a little too fast." Dex helped her straighten up, and she wobbled as the blood rushed to her head. "Are you sure that's all it is?" he asked. "Maybe we should see if Elwyn's here." "Can't you do anything without needing a physician?" Sophie sighed as she turned around, almost crashing into Stina's beanpole body. "Why do you care?" "I don't, but clearly my dad's right about the council choosing you over us. Guess that's the perk of having the Bakers protect you all the time." Bina rolled her eyes. "My family isn't protecting her, you Sasquatch." "Still pretending to be Sophie's BFF, are we?" Stina asked her. "I'm not pretending." Sophie grabbed Bina's arm. "Don't you let her get Biana's arm. Don't you let her get to you," she whispered. Biana may have originally become friends with her because her dad told her to, but they'd been through enough that Sophie knew their friendship was real now. "Aw, aren't you guys cute?" Stina sneered. "Better watch out, Biana. It's only a matter of time before she drags your whole family down to her level." "That's still way higher than your family," Sophie snapped back. Stina grabbed Sophie's tunic. "Whatever you think you know about my family." "Unhand her!" Sandor growled, though coming from him sounded more like a squeak, as he blotted out the shadows and yanked Stina away. Sophie laughed as Stina squealed. Maybe having a bodyguard wouldn't be so bad after all. "Are you okay, Miss Foster?" Sandor asked. "I'm fine, thank you." "Good." He turned back to Stina, patting the weapon at his side. "I have my eye on you." "You look scared," Dex told Stina as she watched Sandor melt back into the shadows. "Did you pee your pants?" "I don't talk to trash." Stina stalked away, but Dex called after her. "Better be nice to me. I'd hate you to have exploding farts at the opening ceremonies. If you think about slipping me one of your stupid elixirs, I will have your flooded to elixir so fast you won't know what hit you." "Kinda like what happened to your dad?" Marilla asked, joining their group, just in time to block Stina's path. She tossed her blonde hair and stood on her tiptoes to get in Stina's face. "That's right. I know all of the Heeks family's secrets." "You wish Reddick," Stina grumbled, but she looked nervous as she shoved the tiny girl aside and made her way back to the two giggly minions. Marilla grinned. "I'm a few minutes late, and I missed all the fun. Don't worry, I'm sure Stina will pick plenty more fights with me before the year's over," Sophie told her, looking forward to it. Sophie had no doubt she was the only thing Marilla liked more than causing trouble with gossip. which was why she seemed to know everything Bianca and Jessie showed Marilla, like chirography, which Marilla perfected on her first try. Sophie tried not to sulk as she asked, "So, what did you mean about Stina's dad?" Marilla glanced over her shoulder and motioned for everyone to come closer. Stina's dad never manifested a special ability, but he tries to hide it. He even tried to fake one when he was younger so he could still take the idol levels and join the nobility. But of course, he got caught because, dude, he can't fake a special ability. They expelled him, and he had to finish his education at Exile. The name always made Sophie ill. She didn't know much about it, just that it was where they sent prodigies who were ruled hopeless cases. I also heard that the only reason Stina's parents weren't ruled a bad match was because of her dad's sisters married to someone who works at the matchmaking office, and they rigged the results. Marilla added quietly, "Of course, there's no way to prove that, but come on, how else would someone without a special ability end up matched to an empath?" Dex's hands curled into fists. "If that's true, of course it's true," Marilla interrupted. "Why do you think her dad took her mom's name? And he keeps using the Heeks' gifts with unicorns to elevate his own status. My mom thinks it's only a matter of time before the council makes him an emissary. He'd be the first talentless to do it." That explained why Timken had been so insane on taking Sylvanie, and there was no way Sophie was letting him anywhere near her again. "What's up with him?" Marilla asked as Dex wandered away from their group. Dex's parents had been ruled a bad match when they got married because of his dad never manifested an ability either. Dex had been teased his whole life because of it. Sophie moved to the side. "Hey," she said, nudging him until he looked at her. "Think you can help me master these dance moves before the ceremonies next week?" A small grin spread across his lips. "I don't know. I can't exactly work miracles." "Hey, I'm not that bad." He grabbed her hands as she tried to shove him, and his face turned serious. "You're not bad at all. You're awesome." He blushed after he said it, and Sophie dropped her eyes to the ground. Sir Harding saved them from the crushing awkwardness when he clapped his hands and announced, "That should be enough rehearsing for everyone. I shall see you at the ceremonies. And don't forget to collect your schedules from your lockers before you leave." The rest of the prodigies cheered, but Sophie had to force herself to smile. She'd been dreading her schedule since the council approved her for another year at Foxfire. Her admission came with a condition. She trudged a few steps behind her friends as they made their way to the main campus building. Bianca showed them how she'd gotten their Nexus offer early, and they were all so busy telling her how cool that was, especially Jency, who seemed glued to Bianca's side, that they didn't even notice. Not that Sophie minded. Bianca deserved a few moments of fame after so many years in Fitz's shadow. It did make Sophie wish she knew when she'd be allowed to remove her own stupid nexus. Though the halls changed from black to blue, and then to the weird amber brown, the color level 3 wing. They went straight to the atrium, the huge central quad filled with crystal trees, and an enormous mastodon statue that was sleek and smooth, like it'd been carved from a gigantic piece of amber. A mentor womb Sophie didn't recognize handed her from a tiny square of paper with her name and a rune. She made her way to the walls, lined with narrow doors, searching for the one labeled with matching rune. She found it in the darkest corner, or maybe it just felt that way as she licked the thin silver strip, which thankfully tasted crusty, and pulled open the locker door. Inside she found a neat stack of textbooks, a few rakes and shovels, and a small scroll on the top shelf. She needed several deep breaths before she reached for the scroll and unrolled it. Elven History, PE, Elmis Stellium, and Multi-Special Studies. Nothing to worry about there. She had the same subjects at level 2, and even though she had new mentors, she knew she could handle them. Linguistics and algebra didn't sound too bad either, and explained why they'd given her gardening supplies. The second to last session was the one that made her palms sweat, inflicting, with Counselor Bronte, who had already sworn to fail her. Alden had told her not to worry, but that was a very worrisome thing. Though seeing the session officially listed wasn't that made her heart pick up speed. An unexpected note underneath her telepathy session triggered that Fitz Baker will also attend this session. And that's the end of chapter 16. That's very interesting.